do? What you
See
do?
it right now. Alright, do the thumbnail.
Alright, ready? Oh. Does it? You suck.
Alright, reaction video to Shit
To
Your Pants scary
shit
video.
your pants, scary video.
Right here, right now.
Already shat a little bit.
Yo,
Just by
I
looking
see
at
it
Cylinder.
now.
Cylinder's scared right now.
See it right now. Like the video, subscribe right now. Even though we haven't started, but subscribe right now.
Subscribe right now.
The
Really?
person.
Subscribe my nose.
Shut your pants, shut your. Alright,
Yo! I go.
Before heading to
Leave,
my
Angel.
local community college for classes, I like to wake up at around 5 in the morning for a brisk morning jog. It helps clear my head and definitely helps wake me up so I can focus in class. When I first started doing this, it was a huge hassle, but over time I grew accustomed to it, and it's now a highlight of my day. However, as time went on, I found myself becoming quite uncomfortable. Not in a physical sense, but more so it was like my fight or flight instincts began kicking in seemingly at random. I'd whip my head around to see if anybody was following me or even peeking at me through the wooded park in which I ran, but couldn't see anybody. It didn't help that it was dark either, so even if there was somebody creeping in the dark, there was no way I could tell. As an extra precaution, I started carrying around some pepper spray in order to fend off any would-be attackers. But as time went on and that eerie sensation occurred more and more, I just couldn't bring myself to run anymore. A friend of mine, Daniel, a self-proclaimed runner himself, told me that I shouldn't worry about it. He said that the mind plays tricks on oneself when it can't see things clearly, especially in the dark. After being reassured by him, I decided to give jogging another go. So today, like any other day, I slapped on some black leggings, tied my hair up in a ponytail, put on my kicks, and set my music volume to full blast and headed out the door. I felt fantastic at first and was loving the cool breeze and crisp morning air. But then, about halfway into my jog, a tall and hooded figure stepped out onto the path in front of me. Quickly, I pulled out my pepper spray and yelled at the person to leave me alone. The person quickly pulled down their hood, revealing themselves to be Daniel. I sighed with relief as he approached and laughed at how funny it was that we ran the same path. I expressed to him that I felt safer knowing he was around. Daniel, however, stepped a little too close and gave a crooked smile. He said that of course I was safe with him, as apparently I had been safe with him for weeks. The realization of what he meant quickly dawned on me, as his hands began to creep their way around my waist. I screamed at him to let me go and prepared to spray him, but he slapped it out of my hand and proceeded to grab my throat. With strange screams, I begged him to let me go for someone to help me. He yelled at me and tightened his grip, asking why I wasn't thankful for his watchful eyes for the past several weeks.
Fuck you, Daniel.
I was stunned at the complete personality change from the once gentle friend I knew. Pretty soon, I started to black out and grow weak. But just before passing out, I could hear the sounds of dogs barking and an older man screaming for Daniel to let me go. In a panic, he released me and ran back into the woods. I gasped for air before I began sobbing as the man escorted me out of the park and brought me straight to the police station. And despite my fears and reservations, I told them everything I knew about Daniel, or what I thought I knew, and what he had done to me. They immediately sent a patrol car out and told me that everything would be okay. The next day, I heard Daniel never showed up to class. He had been arrested several hours later after I left the police station and confessed to everything with a disgusting amount of self-righteousness. He was recorded as saying, "She needed me. Only I can protect her. Who knows what could have been hiding in those woods?" It took me a while to feel comfortable going back to school, and even then, my trust in people was never the same again. I guess even the ones you were close to can snap, just like that.
That was mid. Put another one.
Any time.
That one was mid. No, that one was mid.
I'm scared. You scared? Second video. Let's go.
Back in the summer of 2016, I got my first job at 18 years old.
I was
Nice.
excited
Me
about the
too.
work, but not about the commute. Without traffic,
Facts.
it was a 30-minute drive both ways. And I normally got off work around midnight, and the last thing I wanted to do was drive a half hour to get home. During the first few weeks, I was still getting used to my new routine, and one of the first things my mother told me was to keep an eye on my gas tank, and if I ever needed more, I should leave early and stop on the way, but never on my way back. I understood her concern. I was a petite 18-year-old female, and I looked even younger. But being who I was, I half forgot, half ignored that advice. And one night on my way home, I realized I legitimately didn't have enough gas in the tank to get me to my exit. I pulled into the first station I could find, not caring about the brand or the cost of the gas. I decided to make it as quick as possible, and only put in about $10 worth, just to get myself out of there. I
Yeah, it
swiped
was
my
at
card and
the
began
time of
pumping
gas
gas.
not
And
Biden.
once it got to the $10 mark, I shut it off and printed out my receipt. Thinking the worst was behind me, I was about to climb back into my car and book it home, when a voice came from the tiny intercom above the pump. "Ma'am, there was a problem with your credit card payment." I paused and glanced at the guy at the counter and felt a chill spiral down my neck. He was one of those tall, gaunt, sketchy-looking clerks, and was staring right out the window at me, beckoning me to come inside. I stepped back towards the gas pump and pressed the button on the intercom. "What's wrong with my card? I have a receipt. It went through just fine." I didn't try to hide the annoyance in my voice. I didn't like the look of this guy, or the way he sounded. "I just need you to come inside, ma'am. Your receipt is incorrect. I'm going to need to run your card in here," he replied, a bit too quickly. I looked back at the guy through the window in frustration. There was no way I was going in there, where I would be alone with him. He was staring at me wide-eyed, like some kind of creep. I stood my ground, pulled out my phone, and checked my credit card app. I held it up stupidly as if he could see it from there, and I pressed the intercom button again. "It went through. I see it on my statement. I'm not coming in." "Ma'am, if you attempt to leave, I'll call the police. I have your tag number. Please come inside." I then shouted at him from across the parking lot instead of pressing the intercom. "Over $10 of gas, you're gonna call the cops? Fuck you. I'm leaving." I walked a few steps around my car and gave him the finger.
Yo!
I was just about to walk back around my car and climb into the driver's seat when I paused. He was mouthing something to me through the window. I would have ignored it, but he suddenly looked much more desperate than creepy. He kept beckoning me forward and calling out something that I couldn't hear through the window. I must have made a weird look, because 5 seconds later he slammed a piece of paper on the window where he had hastily written, "Guy in your car."
Yo.
I booked it inside the station, and once I was there, the clerk locked the door and told me to get down. He had his eyes on my car and had a gun in his hand.
Yeah.
I squatted down behind the counter and watched the security cameras as a tall guy in sweatpants and a windbreaker nudged my back door open, slid out quickly, and jogged away into the night. I started freaking out. Turns out the clerk had noticed the guy hanging around the side of the building on the monitors, and as soon as I pulled in, he made a beeline for my car. He crouched down and opened the door, and slid himself inside as I was swiping my card, being careful not to close the door all the way behind him, so that I wouldn't hear anything. The clerk had noticed all of this on the camera, and immediately called the cops, who arrived a few minutes later. They searched the area and my car, but were not able to locate the guy, or anything that would lead back
that's
to
why I
him.
don't pump gas. No, sir.
The gas station clerk probably saved my life, because who knows what would have happened if I had driven off with that stranger in the back seat. I think the lesson here is obvious. It's not enough to be cautious. You have to stay alert as well. Be suspicious but not stupid. And always listen to your mom.
Mom.
My mom.
Mom. Should I cut my hair bald? Yes. Oh my god. No.
Oh my god. Apparently this is like a real like thing. that happens to me.
That's crazy right there. That one was.
I'm about to close my window for how crazy this next one is. Yeah, but fuck this. Actually, not fucking with this next video.
Last night, I was in my living room reading some stories about the black-eyed children and the real-life men in black. It was around 2:30 in the morning, and my dog went to the door like he had to go out. I started to get up, and he started growling at the door. He has never growled at anything in his life. He's only 6 months old. Then, my other dog jumped up onto the couch, trembling and whining. She's a year old. Needless to say, this unnerved me, since I was reading about creepy stuff and was already a little freaked out. So, I just sat back on the couch and held my older dog, trying to calm her down. Then, a knock came on the door. Usually, my dogs go wild, barking and whining excitedly because they love people. But my 6-month-old puppy ran away from it and came over by me. At this point, my heart was racing, and I was just terrified. All the lights in my house were off, and the curtains were drawn. I don't have a peephole, so I peeked out through the blinds of the window behind me that overlooked the porch. There were 2 boys standing there. One looked to be around maybe 5. He was really little, and the other one was about 10, I'd say. They had their heads down and were wearing winter clothes, heavy jackets. I thought this was weird because it's in the middle of summer. Then, they both turn and look up at me. I don't have a bulb on my porch light, so I couldn't see their faces, but they looked directly at the window. This freaked me out even more, so I moved away from the window and just sat on my couch. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I had heard that if you knew about them, then they would visit you. Then one of them spoke.
That's what I'm saying.
Can you let us in? It's really cold out here, and my brother is hungry. I didn't move, and I didn't reply.
That's crazy.
I was immediately alarmed because I had no idea how they knew I was a ma'am. I just sat there on my couch. What the hell would 2 young kids be doing out at this time of night anyway? Plus, it's June in Alabama. It isn't cold by any means. I had read stories, and I thought, nope, not gonna answer the door, fuck this. Ma'am, please let us in. I saw you through the window. I know you're there. It will only take a moment. I was like, okay, what the fuck? A moment?
That's
What
scary
kids
as
say that? I was frozen in fear and just refused to answer them at all.
Look at the dogs.
I waited for them to go away and didn't dare look out my window because I just knew that they were right next to it and would be staring back at me with pitch black eyes. Then, after a few seconds of silence, they started pounding on my window, and I heard the same voice again.
Fuck.
Let us in, please, it's cold. We have to call our mum. She'll be worried if we don't call her. At this point, I was almost in tears. Just sat back against the arm of my couch and held my legs up to my chest. There was no way I was answering that fucking door. I stayed that way for about half an hour until I was sure that they were gone and everything was quiet. I never saw these kids' eyes. I have no idea for sure if they were black-eyed children, but I definitely believe that they were. I grabbed my phone and called my friend, who had suggested I read the stories, and woke her up and begged her to come stay the night with me. After I told her what happened, she agreed right away. About 15 minutes later, she still wasn't here. I started to get worried, because she only lives on the next street over. I saw headlights in my driveway and looked out the window. I saw her get out of the car and run to my door, banging on it. I let her in immediately, and she was crying, and had this terrified look on her face and said, "You aren't going to believe this, but I swear to God, I just encountered the 2 kids you told me about." She said she was at a stop sign and checked her phone for a second when this kid knocked on her window. It startled her, so she looked up and strangely, the streetlights were out, so she couldn't see his face, but there was another younger kid behind him. She cracked the window open, already apprehensive, and said, "Can I help you?" And the kid said, "Give us a ride," in a demanding, overly confident voice for a child. She didn't say anything, and the kid stepped toward her car, and he was close enough now that she noticed he had jet black eyes, wall to wall black, no white.
Yo.
She said she wanted to drive away immediately, but felt like she was being pulled into his stare, almost opening her door before she snapped out of it. She gunned the gas pedal and went straight to my house. We stayed up the rest of the night together. According to the stories, they usually pay you more than one visit, so I'm going to take a shit ton of melatonin and knock myself out tonight to try and sleep right through, in case they decide to come again. Believe me or not, this really happened, right here in Huntsville. Lock your doors and windows and ignore any child that comes to your door asking for help, especially if it's at night.
That's actually crazy.
So basically, any kids on the street, you sucker punch them, kick them on the floor, dip out.
That's crazy. Oh, I can't do it. Let me wash it off a little bit.
Bitch! Lizzie, try not to laugh with our water in our mouth?
Alright, told me.
Alright.
Alright, that's it.
Barbecue bacon burger